Bill.
Vanwall versus Ferrari.
I don't know. I don't sign off these things. It's way above my pay grade, isn't it?
From Autosport.com and Autosport Magazine, I'm Kevin Turner, and this is the Autosport Podcast. Well, welcome to the latest episode of our run through the greatest races in World Championship history. We've picked out 100 broken into 10 episodes or 10 chapters based on a book that I had the pleasure of putting together with Roger Smith. And Roger joined us now. How are you doing, Roger? We're doing pretty well, I think, getting through our 10 list of 10s.
We are, and I'm enjoying it enormously. Hearing you two guys, with Karun Chandhok here on my right, and you as well.
Turning into a co-host now, introducing the next guest. This is excellent. I don't even have to try too hard now. Karun, you did. To be fair, you did help us out with some of these choices, but I suppose you've got the most license to disagree with us during the course of these episodes.
Yeah, I offered a little fleeting vote on the list. So
a couple of key points.
Yeah, you guys did the donkey work. But you know, I'm enjoying it. You know, I love looking back at the history of the sport, as you well know. But trying to pick the greatest race is really hard. But I really enjoy this next chapter, actually, because this is one that I actually questioned your number one on this. So I'm looking forward to getting into it.
Yes, I think there is a good debate to be had about this one, because we have had an outbreak of too much agreement in some of these episodes. So I think past masters, as in PASS, not PAST, because we wanted to pick out, Roger, races we kind of wanted to do a greatest overtakes list, didn't we? Which I think is why we've ended up with an order which is quite controversial potentially, because
it's one of the trickier ones.
Yes.
I think it was right to try and get a chapter about passing into the book.
That's what we all tune in for, isn't it?
Because it is. I mean, overtaking equals racing. You know, some people say that it epitomises the whole sport. Going for the gap, closing the door, you know, the red mist moment, whatever it might be, where one car overtakes another. And there are races when there's been a pass, often for the win, which is absolutely crucial, and you know, sort of you get out of your chair and shout when you see it.
So we've ended up with a mix of races that I'd say were genuinely great races that featured a fantastic overtake, or maybe more than one, and then others where I think maybe the races themselves weren't so wonderful, but the pass was, you know, we have to talk about it basically. So I think that's where we're gonna have a few differences of opinion. It's almost how you weight the criteria, I think, with this sort of thing. So let's get into it then, because overtaking, we like talking about that. Now, most of these races, footage exists for us to go back and look at these moments again and again and again, but not in our first entry, which is number 10, the 1958 Italian Grand Prix, and Tony Brooks overcoming Ferrari basically on home ground, Roger.
Yes, I mean, 1958, for my money, if there's going to ever be another film about a particular Grand Prix season, Ferrari versus Vanwall in 58, with Hawthorn eventually coming up as the winner over Sterling Moss.
Drama,
and then tragedy at the end of Hawthorn's death in the following January.
I'd watch that.
It's a great story. I mean, there were you know, the sort of Collins was killed and Musia was killed, and on the Ferrari side, and Stuart Lewis Evans. It's an amazing season, and I think that it's got into, you know, number 10 in past masters, because this is the moment when the British car Vanwall clinched the first Constructors' Championship, and it was second driver, although he was a superb driver, Tony Brooks.
Yeah, it doesn't seem fair
at the wheel.
The second driver, does it? Really?
Yes, not
number
really.
2 to Sterling Moss, but it's a great in his own right.
But Moss went out early on, lap 17, and Brooks took over. He'd been into the pits as well, and this could easily be in recovery drives as a race as well. But it's the way that he caught and swept by Hawthorn to take the lead, and then take the Constructors' Championship, and make sure that this race kept Moss's chances going as well by winning as well, because if Hawthorn had won that particular race, it would have been over and Hawthorn would have been the champion. So there's a lot going on, and the drive and the pass, I think, were worthy of number 10 at least in this particular chapter.
Which is presumably your point that you can pick up on, Karun, is that as an overtake, we can't really assess it, can we? But it's one of those races that needs to be somewhere in here, I think.
Yeah, I guess so. And again, you know, we have some overlap, don't we? Because, for example, I look at it and go, Silverstone 87, Mansell on Piquet. To me, that's an incredible pass for the win, but it's elsewhere.
Yeah, that was in
book.
our comebacks episode.
Exactly.
Comebacks
So
that we did.
again, for anyone who's not listened to the other episodes, there's overlap in a lot of these races.
Yeah,
We haven't just randomly forgotten one of the great overtakes of all time.
Yeah, exactly. And I have to admit that when it comes to the number 10 choice, I'm going to have to blindly defer to Roger here because I actually know nothing about that race. So I'm learning myself in this journey.
And actually, that's part of the point, isn't it, Roger, of the book, is to try and highlight. Obviously, it's great to look at the most famous races and the great performances, but there are also, in the 1,100 plus World Championship races we've had so far, some great races that tend to get maybe a little bit forgotten for one reason or another. I don't think there'd be many fans that would suddenly start talking about Monza 1958, but there's a lot going on. Ferrari run disc brakes for the first time.
Yes.
We've been celebrating 75 years of the World Championship, but actually the Constructors' Championship didn't arrive until 1958, so it's got a lot of nice historical elements to it. I think this race. So don't shoot the messenger. It's if you can't go and watch the overtake, but maybe have a look into the 1958 season because I actually think that'd be a great idea for a film. Is that something you could get Sky to work on? Do you think?
What? A review of the 1958 Italian Grand Prix?
No, the season.
Doing a film.
Van Wall versus Ferrari.
I don't know. I don't sign off these things. It's way above my pay grade, isn't it?
Fair enough. Well, we'll go to a much more modern race now that people will be more familiar with. At number 9, 2014 Hungarian Grand Prix. And I would say that Daniel Ricciardo, who won this race, was a winner of great Grand Prix, even if he wasn't a great Grand Prix winner, if that makes sense. So this is one of his best drives, wasn't it, Roger? Lots going on in this one at Hungaroring.
Yes, we've got Ricciardo here on 2 of the races in this particular section on the Fast Masters, and you have to say that was what he was known for. And it's difficult to sort of think about him, sort of the way things turned out in his career. That there was a time when you really looked to him as being somebody who had something very special in the ability to pass cars, and this was one where he did exactly that. With 2 laps to spare, he clinched victory.
Well, 2014 was a breakout season for him, wasn't it? Because you'd come into it with Vettel having won 4 consecutive World Championships. Then we've got this massive reset of the rules. All of a sudden, Red Bull, Renault, with particular struggling. So Mercedes are the 4. But actually, it's this young hotshot who is absolutely hammering the established 4-time world champion. Ricciardo was the number 1 driver that season on performances. And okay, he'd won in Canada, but really it was a bit fortuitous because of the issues that Mercedes had with the MGUK, I think it was, wasn't it? Or brakes. Yeah, it was the MGUK issue.
So yeah,
they had
overheating
in Montreal, and that created the brake overheating issue. But this was a really proper win, I felt. He'd done good, decisive overtaking maneuvers. In a straight fight, the Mercedes would have won every single race that year. But he made it happen, Well,
there's a bit of off strategy as well, wasn't there?
Yeah. And Lewis,
offsets.
Well, so Lewis starting at the back, didn't he? Because Lewis had the issue in qualifying.
Yeah, he went off on the first lap, I think, didn't he?
No, didn't he have the issue, the car off? There was that issue in qualifying, wasn't it?
Yes,
he started at the back. So he had to come through. But yeah, I mean, I always thought Daniel had very good feel under braking when you had to go away from the racing line. If you think of, that battle with him and Vettel in Mexico a few years later, into turn 4, away from the racing line, low grip, dusty part of the track. And a lesser driver with less feel would have just clattered into the Ferrari, but he didn't. And I think that's why he features twice on this list. Is I do think he had very good feel with the left foot under braking to just balance the locking and control the modulation to get the car into the apex, and that's where he was really, really good.
And a shout out to his team as well, because they put him on a 3-stop strategy, which allowed him to have the tyres to do what he did at the end. But despite that, and he had a little bit of help with the safety car, it was just the way that he sort of accomplished it at the end and went past drivers in that remarkable way he could overtake.
Shout out to Fernando Alonso for running running at the front in the 2014
Yeah.
Ferrari for so long as well. I was kind of I was a big Ricciardo fan at the time, and it's a shame, he was our number one driver, also top 50 ahead of world champion Lewis Hamilton that year. That's how good he was in that sort of period, early years of the turbo hybrid. It's kind of a shame that his comeback didn't really work out. I think most people would agree. But incisive passes, and I think this would qualify as a great race.
Yeah.
It was just a great race to watch. There's so much going on. So that was the 2014 Hungarian Grand Prix. Number 8 is the 1979 Canadian Grand Prix. And Roger, I think this features one of the great F1 rivalries that people forget because it was brief. But Gilles Villeneuve versus Alan Jones.
Alan Jones,
proper
yes.
wheel-to-wheel races, weren't they?
Yes, in another episode, we were talking about Gilles Villeneuve and the famous convoy, where Gilles didn't make any errors, but he did make one little one in this particular race, and Jones was through on lap 51, and they brushed wheels. It was one of those sort of very close encounters with the overtake itself.
Yeah, you can find it. You can find it on YouTube or other video platforms that are available. Yeah. It's still out there. It's a fascinating race, actually, because Villeneuve then hangs on to him as well.
That's
really,
right.
It's a proper race.
That's very true. I think at Montreal it was inevitable that he was going to try and still win it, and he tried his hardest. He couldn't pass again, but he was hanging on for dear life right through the remaining laps.
And a great contest between two different cars as well, wasn't it? Because by this stage, Williams had unlocked that ground effect potential. And you'd have to say, for the second half of that 79 season, the Williams was arguably the best car on the grid, wasn't it? Since the British Grand Prix onwards, really. So, for Villeneuve and Jones, it just showed the quality, because it was, the end result was Williams Ferrari, but they were over a minute ahead of their teammates, which just shows the quality of the driving, I think, at the front.
I think they were the two best drivers in the world at that time, well, in Formula 1 anyway, at that time. I mean, Nelson Piquet fans would probably get a little bit cross, but he hadn't quite got into his stride at this point, had he? So yes, it's worth looking up that one. Again, it's one of those ones that I don't think would immediately come to mind, but it's a proper race all the way through. So, number 7, our second appearance of Dan Ricciardo in our list, the 2018 Chinese Grand Prix. This was another one, Roger, where he had to do all the work at the end, or near.
Yes. He went from P6 to P1 in 10 laps, and they were superlative laps where he was overtaking drivers, in a very, as you said, his left foot braking style, and he was sort of in a very strong position in the end to I can't do this actually, but
I think that was fair. I mean, the move on Bottas is it's just breathe in, isn't it? And he just makes it in there.
But this is one of the races which I'm going to disagree with you both.
Oh, okay.
Because there's a massive tire
advantage
difference at the end, and I think we were in this era where, if you were on the right tire at the right phase of the race, it was worth a huge chunk of lap time. Don't get me wrong, I think it was a great drive. I don't think I would have put it higher than the 2014 Budapest. I'm not sure. Don't ask me what I would have replaced it with, but I'm not sure I'd put this in the top 10, because I think this picture was skewed so much by the tyres at the end of the race.
I will come back at you with, there was another driver in the same car on the same basic strategy who got on to be quite good.
Yeah.
Who was ahead of Ricciardo and managed not to win this race.
That's a good point.
I mean, actually, because Max Verstappen would never admit this, so I'm going to put this to you instead, Karun. I think that the 2018 Chinese Grand Prix and the 2018 Monaco Grand Prix are two moments where Max Verstappen has gone, I need to do something different, because he smashes it into the wall at Monaco, and Ricciardo wins. His teammate wins the race with a damaged car, basically underpowered car. He's running ahead of Ricciardo in this race, should be winning it. A 2025 spec Verstappen wins this race, but he tries to go around the outside of Lewis Hamilton in a ridiculous place. It was never going to work. And in the process of sorting it out, Ricciardo goes, "Oh, thanks very much." And all of Ricciardo's moves are everything that Verstappen should have done, didn't, but would now.
Yes, I get that, but I don't know still if this is going to be, my 7th best race for an overtaking move. I'm not sure. So that's the one I'll argue with.
No, that's fair enough.
But now that it is here, let's talk about it, because everything you've said is absolutely right. You know, the reality is both Red Bulls were on the same strategy. I think they double stacked, didn't they, at the last pit stop?
It was the right call, obviously.
It was the right call. You know, they and I do think, if you look over the last decade, I do think Red Bull have generally been the best team strategically.
Oh,
they think outside the box.
That,
they do something differently. They're not afraid to roll the dice, and they often get it right.
Yeah.
So they gave both drivers the opportunity to do it. And as you said, at that point when they came out, Max was in front. So a brilliant drive from Daniel to do it. And as you said before, the move for the win on Bottas was right on the edge of having a shunt. And again, it comes back to it. You know, he was away from the racing line into turn 6, wasn't it? Downhill braking. It's a little bit bumpy into that area there. And the rear of the car often gets quite light. So for him to just balance the brake without having a lockup, and then not go too wide to allow the switchback on the way out as well, was a brilliant move to execute. And he picked his way even up to that point smartly, which perhaps Max's youthful exuberance at that stage and inexperience really at that point, you know, let's be honest, compared to Daniel, maybe came into play. So yeah, great win, but for me, I wouldn't have put it above his 2014 Budapest one.
Fair enough.
So is it that it's too high at 7, or that you wouldn't have it in at all?
Well, as I said
swap
before,
it with 2014.
I would have swapped it with 2014.
Yeah.
I would have gone for that.
Wouldn't argue too strongly against it. I think it's probably worth saying at this point that in any great overtaking manoeuvre, you have to have the other person know when they have been overtaken, which is a problem I think that Formula 1 has now, in that too many drivers don't know when they've been overtaken or use the rules to try and imply that they haven't been.
Yeah.
And Bottas, he sort of 3/4 closes the door.
Yeah.
And then not quite, but then he doesn't then just go, well, I'm going to turn it anyway. You know, there's a bit of, it takes two to tango, doesn't it? Okay, well, number 6, the 2001 Brazilian Grand Prix. And there are two moments I think you could pick for this one, which is part of the reason why it's up at 6. Which one was your favourite pass?
I think actually it must be that lap 3 with Montoya.
Oh yeah,
that was amazing, that pass. But then there's the other one later on in lap 50 with Coulthard, with the 3 abreast going in, and so Schumacher was overtaken. This is the thing, twice, different occasions, different drivers, but that's what put it up in this list quite high.
I became a Montoya fan on lap 3 of that race.
I think a lot of people did.
Yeah, and I remained a Montoya fan until he went to McLaren, because I thought this is the man who's going to restore Williams' greatness at the top, because he was just brilliant. I mean, he came from so far back on that restart, the safety car restart.
He didn't have the better fuel load situation either, I don't think, at that point.
No, and I remember being livid with Jos Verstappen for several months afterwards, basically until Monza, when Monty finally won his first Grand Prix. I remember being livid with Verstappen that he denied Montoya a Grand Prix victory.
Lap 39, that was.
I'm not being contrary. I'm trying to be consistent with my own previous decisions on things. I preferred the Coulthard move because I think, well, A, there's more cars involved, but B, it's clean. And the Montoya one is robust, isn't it? I mean, it's probably exactly the sort of thing that Schumacher would have done to anyone else, which is why everyone loved it so much, because it was finally someone doing to him what he'd been doing to others. But it's not the greatest piece of artistic overtaking I think anyone's ever seen. But there was a lot of excitement around Montoya, wasn't it? Because he's done everything in F3000, gone to America, been incredible there, was brilliant. And he sort of provided the fireworks nice and early. So I think this race is also one of David Coulthard's best drives, actually. Because it was rain affected, difficult conditions, the pass for the leads. You know, it was had a lot going on.
Probably his best season as well, though, wouldn't you say? Like Coulthard 2001 was a strong season for him. Obviously, Hakkinen was struggling, but on the whole, you know, Coulthard had a very good 2001.
And he lost quite a few points through no fault of his own, didn't he? That year, he didn't have the rub of the green, because the gap between him and Schumacher at the end of the season was big in points, but it shouldn't have been that big. Okay, well, let's get into the top 5, and I'm afraid Mark Schumacher is the victim in our next. I mean, actually, that is a point, isn't it? Who you overtake, I think, is important.
Yes.
If it's one of the greats and you're doing the move on them, that's got to give it some extra gravitas, hasn't it?
Yep.
And going down the outside of a high-speed corner of someone who went on to be a 7-time world champion has got to be up there. So in at 5th, is the 1996 Portuguese Grand Prix. Jacques Villeneuve's moved round the Parabolica at Estoril around the outside of Michael Schumacher's Ferrari, which I think is enhanced by the fact that he then goes on to put in, I think, his best Grand Prix.
Yes.
When he's up against it in the championship. Damon Hill, teammate, down the road, should have won it. This is probably. Would you agree with that, Roger? That it's not just the great pass. It's also
it is. It is. Jacques was irresistible that day. He had to win in many ways because the championship was beginning to go away from him, and he was bottled up behind other cars and ultimately Schumacher, and to go round outside of Schumacher to release him to actually then go on and overtake Damon and win the race was, quite phenomenal. And I think it was a truly great pass.
Well, it was, I think you'd have to say, Jacques' best race, wasn't it?
I think
in
so,
F1,
yeah.
because not only did he do that brilliant pass on Michael, but he then had to catch, was 10 or 12 seconds to Damon, and then make the strategy work. And I think he somewhat
jumped him in the pits.
Yeah, he somewhat caught Damon by surprise by just jumping him in the pits there, making the strategy work. And I think Jacques Clear tells a story, doesn't he, that when they were talking about the circuit at Estoril, Jacques said, "I can make overtaking moves around the outside here." And they all went, "What are you talking about? It's like an oval. That's what you do."
Yeah,
and he did.
Our experience.
Yeah, and he did.
That's a good point.
Was the Ferrari the best Ferrari they've made?
Well, I think
not even in the top. Not even in the top 20, is it? That
No,
one?
no. I mean, how it won 3 races, really.
Well, Schumacher's brilliant. That's how it won it.
Yeah.
But fair play to Jacques. That was outstanding.
I've just realised for the first time that we've got 3 consecutive Schumacher being overtaken here. So I've only just realised that as we're looking.
But it's your point, isn't it? It's about who you overtake.
It's your anti-Schumacher bias coming through.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, actually, while we're on the Schumacher one of the ones that he did do that I always enjoyed was the move at Estoril on Damon into the chicane when he cleaned the line for a couple of laps beforehand and then tucked it down the inside. I thought that was quite good.
95 was that?
95, that's right, yeah. So I don't want people to think it's complete. Yeah. Actually, he's also involved in number 3. Okay, never mind. 2000 Belgian Grand Prix. I mean, a lot of people would have this as their number 1. I wouldn't, on the basis of how loose the Ferrari was through Eau Rouge and the laps running up to it. I think it was inevitable once Mika had worked out a way of getting alongside without being driven off the track, basically. But it's a dramatic moment, isn't it, Roger? It's one of the memorable moments of 21st
I bet we can all
F1.
still see it in our mind's eye, can't you? It's one of those things that's embossed in your mind. And the Zonta sandwich where Schumacher goes above and Hakkinen.
Fair play to him as well for staying. If he'd gone, you're there and moved, it would have been a massive accident, wouldn't it?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that your point is valid. That by that stage, Schumacher was struggling for pace, wasn't it? Mika had that half spin down Stavolo, and then rejoined with a bit of a time deficit to catch, managed to catch the time back up, which underlined at that point the Hakkinen McLaren car was quicker. I mean, 2000 is honestly one of my favorite seasons because it felt like the first year where they were properly evenly matched. 98 really. The McLaren was a quicker car and Schumacher hauled Ferrari into contention. 99, Michael broke his leg. I think it would have been a brilliant season by virtue of the fact that Eddie Irvine took it down to the last race. And no disrespect to Eddie, but he wasn't Michael Schumacher. So I think that would have been brilliant. And so 2000 was really the culmination of that rivalry we'd seen building up. And this was a really brilliant race in general to see Mika come back. And I love the picture you've chosen because actually not many drivers would have gone to speak to Michael about something they weren't happy about.
Because the lap before the pass, I mean, Michael basically put him on the grass at 200 miles an hour.
So and Mika was not happy about it, and he went straight over.
I mean, is he talking about the pass or is he talking about the cut-off?
I think it's the lap before.
Yeah, I think he's talking about the chop.
The chop.
Yeah, fair enough, because that would have been a massive accident as well.
Yeah. But certainly he's got Michael's attention, hasn't he, in the picture?
Yeah. Well, I think there was also a mutual respect there that perhaps Michael didn't have with all of his rivals.
Yeah.
Which it's funny you mentioned that about 2000, because I've been working on the best F1 cars that didn't win a championship. And I think in the running for that is the 2000 McLaren, because rarely is a second place car being so close to the winning car in such an epic contest, and it just missed out in the constructors and just missed out in the drivers. Yeah, it was. You just had the peak McLaren. You were just getting up towards peak Ross Brawn, Mark Schumacher, Jean Todt. For the crossover point was 2000, wasn't it? Because after that,
it
Ferrari
just went
was on a roll, really. Into the big three now. Number 3 is a race that some people would pick as the greatest race of all time. I think some perhaps more recent fans, it was a great race to watch. The 2005 Japanese Grand Prix. Roger, there are lots and lots of things that we could pick out of this race. So what are your highlights? Why is it up at 3?
Well, you've got a situation where you're coming towards the end of the season, and Raikkonen versus Alonso for the championship, and they're both starting down the grid. P17 for Raikkonen and P16 for Alonso.
Always a good start when you've got quick cars at the back of the back of the field. That's always a good recipe.
And it became a passing fest. It's not just the single overtake. It's a series of overtakes. I think the one by Alonso, in fact, at a 130R, an outside pass on Michael Schumacher.
Yeah, sorry, Michael. I can't believe we've got 4 consecutive. 205 miles an hour, I think he turned in. I think it was 205 miles an hour he turned in with Michael Schumacher on his inside.
And then there was the final lap pass on Fisichella, which was also, sort of opportunistic and sort of making it stick. But before that, as those two came through the field, there was some fantastic overtaking and a great Grand Prix.
Well, Michael was coming through the field as well, wasn't he? He hadn't qualified particularly well. So he had 3 of the great drivers in that field coming through with different strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, I mean, this race would have been number 1 on my list of past masters.
Would it?
This is the one I would have picked ahead of your next 2. And I just think it was, it was such a fantastic race. It was a sort of must-win race for Kimi to keep in the championship fight, and yes, Fisichella clearly didn't put up enough of an opposition. He defended into the chicane in the final lap, but really he didn't need to, and that put him, at the wrong line. Got a poor run out of the chicane, and that opened the door for Raikkonen. But Kimi still had to do it. He still had to keep his foot absolutely pinned.
Yes,
and I tell you what, heading down to turn 1 of Suzuka it's a pretty daunting move to make.
But they both knew Kimi wasn't going to lift. Before they got there, Fizzy knew I'm done.
Yeah, but to me, that's why this would be number 1, because it was an overtaking move around the outside on the final lap of the Grand Prix for the victory. That's an incredible story. And then you go back to the race itself, as you say, you talk about Alonso. You talk about some of the moves that Kimi pulled off on the way up to that battle.
Alonso passed Webber on the grass coming down the stop bit straight as well. There is a lot. I'll be honest, the reason I didn't have it higher is purely because I think there are half the drivers in the field would have closed out the win with the Renault. I thought Fisichella was so weak that day that it kind of, it's not like Raikkonen was overcoming Michael Schumacher on the last lap. It was Fisichella defending thin air, and that just takes a bit of an edge. But maybe I'm being a bit harsh.
I'm being a bit harsh. You're being harsh.
Yeah,
come on.
Fair enough. It was.
It's printed now. We can't change it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Oh, we win. Also, this is Pete Raikkonen, isn't it? I know that he won his World Championship Friday 2007, but for me, he was never better than that 2004 to 6 period of McLaren. He was just awesome.
I think 2003, 4, 5. With the Michelin tires, with this, the strong support that the Michelin tire offered on the front end with that initial turn in, it gave Raikkonen a feeling of the front axle that made him, I would say, the fastest driver in Formula One at that time. I'm not saying the most complete, because the other Schumachers and Alonso's potentially were that, but I think he was the fastest driver in F1 in that era with the Michelin tire.
Well, let us know what you think. Obviously, you can listen to number 1 and 2 before you email me and kevin.turner@autosport.com. I do think that Suzuka race. I mean, it was.
I'm going to send you an email now.
You're going to get your laptop out. I disagree with this. But my favourite Grand Prix of all time is number 2. So that gives you some idea of the debates that we had to get to these lists. So the 1990 Mexican Grand Prix. Well, first of all, Roger, you say why it's here.
Well, I think it's here because it is one of your favourite Grand Prix, and I can't disagree with you that it was a phenomenal thing, because we've got here at number 2 a pass which has nothing to do with winning the race. It's actually just for P2, but it was something that, again, you can see in your mind's eye when Mansell went round Berger, and I've always called it a red mist moment. He must have had his eyes shut.
He regards it, I believe, as not his best move because it was too risky, because he was so cross. Yeah, it's like that one. I put myself in a position where it could have gone really wrong.
I mean, to me, I was thinking about this. You know, when you look at, I was trying to think what other races would come in here. It's to me, it's still the best overtaking move I can think of in F1 history. I really think so. Just the speed of it, and last lap, last corner. I mean, the bravery required to pull that off is just.
I mean, he could have so easily gone badly wrong, couldn't it? I mean, I can remember seeing it and thinking, he's got to crash.
Well, also, a lot of these passing moves, especially now, is with a tyre advantage. And if you think of the context of this, Berger, who was pretty hard on tyres, Gerhard Berger in the McLaren, got in, and he was coming back after his tyre stop. Mansell had already had a spin on old tyres. Berger catches him and then does, frankly, a really unsubtle barge down the inside into the chicane, forces Mansell off. I mean, now Mansell would just takes the grass, hit the throttle, and rejoin ahead of him, and wins. But that wasn't done in those days, so it looked like Mansell was down out because Berger had the fresh tyres, the momentum, and but I think Mansell must have been so furious. He then puts in a ridiculous lap to get back onto the tail of the McLaren, and then gets that run. And as I say, I believe when we spoke to him, it was almost a bit too brave. He was just so cross. I'm keeping it on the board.
I mean, this is one of the rare races, isn't it, where it's kind of made the list because of the overtaking move for second place. Although Prost on his own, you have to say, did a great job, came through from 13th to win. The move on Senna was excellent. Was Senna already struggling with a slow puncture that time? I think so.
It certainly he was certainly in tyre trouble, but for me that adds to the kind of for me this ticks the past masters definition twice, because you've got certainly one of the greatest overtaking manoeuvres in F1 history, but then also I think Prost is a past master throughout this race, a clinical, his greatest driver, I would argue. 13th on the grid, and he just methodically comes through the field, and there isn't any drama with his overtaking manoeuvres. He just does them. So it's a past master in a different way. And actually, there was some overtaking, with the Williamses and Benettons a bit further behind as well. So that's why it's my Desert Island Grand Prix is this one. If I could only watch one more Grand Prix ever again, I would watch the 1990 Mexican Grand Prix, because I think you get something out of it and enjoyment out of it every single time. Well, actually, what would your Desert Island Grand Prix be? This is a whole new series.
Desert Island Grand Prix. I love it. Love the idea. I think having worked through some of these races already, number 2 probably is going to have to be the Stowe Mansell pass on Piquet. But number 1 has to be Monza 1969, when I saw Jackie Stewart win the World Championship, one of the closest Grand Prix finishes of all time. And very much an important part of my life, because I had my future wife on my arm there and then. So
you have racing and emotional.
Exactly.
It ticks both. I mean, we talked about that in a previous episode, the 1969 Italian Grand Prix. Very much a worthy candle. What about you?
Roger's already mentioned. I was thinking of the '87 British Grand Prix, actually, because it was just an enthralling race watching Mansell come through. But since you've nicked that one,
number 2 that was.
I'm thinking of it. Number 1. 2 tapes exist. You could have the same one.
I tell you what, I'll go for Hungary '98, because I think that was an excellent Grand Prix, and one where you didn't expect Michael to win, and he delivered an unbelievable drive under pressure, tripped McLaren up. You watch it, McLaren should have swapped the cars around, didn't do it, and just completely him and Ross Brawn wrong-footed McLaren completely and won a race that they shouldn't have won.
Which brings us in nicely to number 1, because it's the same venue, but not 1998. Number 1 on our past masters list is the 1986 Hungarian Grand Prix. won by Nelson Piquet. Now, Roger, this for me, this is where we had to make a decision. Do we go for the best race that had a great overtake in it, or do we go for the greatest overtake? And given the nature of the chapter, we went for what we thought was the greatest pass in F1 history, which is basically, talk us through the move.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't certainly the greatest race in itself. It was an absorbing race, an interesting race. You had, not that Mansell was that involved in it, but you had the Piquet, Senna, and Mansell, sort of, they were the key leading lights of that particular season, as we remember. 1986 it was a phenomenal championship year, and you had those guys racing for the victory. But it was the way that Piquet, he seemed to have been waiting his chance, because he sort of was 10 seconds behind, then he caught up. But it was the way he went past. I think that if I could quote here, on lap 57, Piquet settled it with a perilous, tire-smoking, sideways, opposite lock, outside pass into turn one. And I was trying to sort of find the words to try and sum it up. I watched it again and again on the television, and those are the sort of things that sort of encapsulate it. How he didn't slide off, I don't know, but he held it, and it was an amazing pass.
It was a fantastic pass. I would have put this as number 3 and had 2005 up here as number 1, and the same number 2 is the way I would have ordered the top 3.
I think if you're going on the race, the overall race, I think both Mexico and Japan are ahead of this one. I like Mexico as well because I preferred 1990s cars. I'd rather watch early 1990s Formula 1 cars than mid 2000s one, but that doesn't really come into it when you're talking about great races, or maybe it does. Depends on your criteria, but. Regular listeners and readers also all know that I'm not a Nelson Piquet fan. But despite that, I think this is I would put it ahead of Mansell's move, partly because of who it's on. I'll come back to that again. And Senna, not many people overtook him very often. Okay, I know he's in a Lotus Renault versus a Williams Honda. Yeah. The lap before, or a couple laps before, he's tempted Piquet down the inside. Come down the inside, slid wide, thank you very much. And he's made Piquet go around the outside. And it's not done by the time they get to the braking zone. And he's then sideways, but somehow it's almost abnormal, and it's not normal physics. When you've watched racing as long as we have, you know what tends to happen in certain situations. And here it doesn't look like that. You watch the replay and think, how's he come from the outside, going sideways? So he's got opposite lock, but he's still going right. Yeah. The balance and control at that moment, I think, is what wins it for me as an overtake.
Absolutely. I mean, an amazing pass. And as you say, to pass Senna around the outside, I don't know how many others can say they've got that on their CV. So,
and they disliked each other as well, didn't they?
I mean, they loathed each other. I think dislike is the understatement. They absolutely detested each other. But yeah, I think, clearly that if you look back at because there's no onboard there, so you have to look at the offboard video, isn't it?
Yes.
And he's got so much
up. Would be interesting.
Yeah. I don't know if anyone's actually ever unearthed it, but I don't think there is.
No, I don't think so.
But the amount of opposite lock he's got as the car, back then the layout of turn 1 used to drop quite steeply downhill, and he's sliding. It's very cool. Very cool.
Yeah. Well, let's know what you think. Which of these three? Well, actually, it's two different questions, isn't it? What's the greatest overtake in F1 history? And which of these races do you think was best? I think, ultimately, we've ended up with, we chose 1986 Hungary. I'd go for 1990 Mexico, and you go for 2005 Japan, which is good. We like a bit of debate, but the point is they're all great races and they're all great moments. And for me, this list maybe more than any other distills down why I love tuning in. You hope you're going to see one of these races. You won't always, but sometimes you get something a bit special, and all these races were special. Well, thank you very much, Karun Chandhok. Thank you very much, Roger Smith. And thank you very much for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed that one. We'll be back soon with another Autosport podcast.